What if you could take your entire technical skill set and instead of pointing all of that area of genius towards solving technical problems, you redirected it towards solving marketing problems? That's exactly what today's guest did. Today, I got to interview Brian Kelly. He's the founder of Automate MSP, and he is taking a very technical, scientific, data-driven approach to marketing, email marketing, and now getting into LinkedIn marketing. We talked a lot about some of the specifics of how to get emails delivered, how to get people to respond to them. He has a lot of things he said that are contrary to prevailing schools of thought, which I found were really refreshing. And my favorite thing about the interview was that it wasn't a hype. It was a guy who's just been doing this thousands of times and has been building layer upon layer of the best way to get leads from email with a very technical lens. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's get into it. Brian Kelly, always good to have another Brian on the podcast. Thanks for joining.
It's a pleasure to be here, and when we have a collective of Brians like this, I like to refer to it as a Brian storm.
What do you call it, though, when one of the Brians spells it the wrong way and uses a Y?
The Brians that spell it correctly with an I get together and have a vote on whether or not that dude can even stay. Like a Class B Brian if you don't spell it right. But
be Ryan or be Brian the right way.
It's funny. I spend quite a lot of time in Mexico because my wife is Mexican, and they like to spell it Bryan, like Mayan. I get that quite a lot down when I'm dealing with Spanish.
Do you speak any Spanish?
I do. Yeah.
My wife is also Mexican, and I also speak Spanish.
Really?
Yeah.
Where is your wife from? She Chilango?
So her family's from East LA, but she's of Mexican descent. Actually, she doesn't speak any Spanish, and I was fluent in Spanish for much of my life, and I don't really use it anymore. So I'm more conversational. But yeah, I have.
I use it every day because I spend quite a lot. I'm in Mexico right now, and spend quite a lot of time down here, and just over the years have gotten, it's so much easier to learn anything when you're immersed in it and you need it. I learned probably, I came from, I started at MSPs back in 2003 as help desk. And I think I've learned almost everything that way over the past 20, let's just jump in, let's just start doing it and see what happens. And I find that's the best way sometimes,
That is so great.
I started at MSPs back in 2003 as help desk, and I think I've learned almost everything that way over the past 20. Let's just jump in and see what happens, and I find that's the best way sometimes.
That is so great. Well, we won't alienate. We've already alienated our audience by talking about the spelling of our name. We won't alienate them by speaking another language that none of them speak. But some other time, you and I will shoot the breeze in Spanish.
Yeah.
Anyway, listen, it's cool you're in Mexico right now.
I am.
I love your Dia de los Muertos sort of drop behind you. Super cool. And
yeah, I got that at Chichen Itza, the pyramid. There was a dude selling these outside of it, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do the tourist thing today and buy something. And
yeah,
I bought
beautiful.
that. It's a blanket, and I like it. Yeah, I like that stuff.
Well, listen, let's talk a little bit more about why you're here. So you are...
Sure.
You're an MSP guy through and through.
Yeah.
And you have made this really interesting pivot where you were when you and I met on a Zoom call the other day from an introduction of a mutual friend said that you two should meet. And you sort of had this major problem in your business which was an area that you didn't have any expertise. And you decided not only were you going to solve this problem, but you were going to you're going to use your big brain energy and you were going to systemize how to solve that problem. And now you ended up accidentally creating a system that other people can use to solve that problem. So talk to us a little bit about, your background in managed services, at least just wave tops of sort of how you got into the channel and then what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, I started in managed services literally right out of the gate. I had just gone to school for network engineering and got my MCSE on the NT track. Shows you how old I am. And I was out looking for a job, and it just so happened that I landed at a managed service provider and got introduced to managed services like right there at the beginning. And I've just been in it ever since. I started with help desk, and literally throughout the years, I've done everything through. I'm the tier three guy. I've been the guy migrating domains and exchange servers and going around the office at 2 o'clock in the morning before automation and, just the whole thing. But where I started, I really started focusing on back end stuff a handful of years ago, like 10 years ago or so, and really became very, very proficient with tools like ConnectWise Automate and the RMM stuff, and actually previously had a consulting business just doing that stuff for MSPs and automating. And I like to call it just professionally being lazy. Like, I've always had a natural aptitude at getting bored and not wanting to do stuff twice.
Right.
So as soon as that happens, I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be something I can set up to make it where I don't have to do this, right? But I've always definitely been entrepreneurial, and I decided the RMM stuff, and actually previously had a consulting business just doing that stuff for MSPs and automating. And I like to call it just professionally being lazy. Like, I've always had a natural aptitude at getting bored and not wanting to do stuff twice.
Right.
So as soon as that happens, I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be something I can set up to make it where I don't have to do this, right? But I've always definitely been entrepreneurial, and I decided to go and go on my own and kind of start doing some consulting and that sort of thing. And I actually initially partnered with another half that was going to sort of be the CEO, sales driver kind of thing, because that historically has not been my thing. Like, I'm the tech, I'm more the CTO, that kind of thing. And honestly, it was intimidating for me. Not only do I not have a sales background, but I'm actually on the spectrum, and there are some days where I just can't really people. And just the idea of, that I need to, like, to pay the bills was really upsetting to me sometimes. So at first I just strayed away from it, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get somebody that can kind of cover this thing. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. It didn't make a very good choice. I won't go into details, but I was left with, okay, I'm back to square one. I got to figure this out. So I delved into it, and I said, well, wait a minute. This is engineering, like, I know this, like, how do I reach people? Okay, well, there's, say, email. Well, I literally am a network engineer, so that's easy enough, and all the stuff that goes with that. Okay, well, there's, say, email. Well, I literally am a network engineer, so that's easy enough, and all the stuff that goes with that. And the more that I really dove into it, the more I realized that there's just a right way to do it. And wherever there's a right way to do it, you can systemize and scale that. But I've been doing it for years, with making sure everybody has SentinelOne, making sure, whatever it is, it's really no different. There's rules you got to play by. And like a client that, say, an MSP supports, there's nothing stopping them from signing up with Microsoft and going to get Azure and set all this stuff up themselves. But, there's a lot of best practice around it and a right way to do it. And I just found that really was the secret sauce of just figuring out what the deal is, with, okay, if this spam is an issue, well, what makes you land there? Cold email and LinkedIn outreach isn't new. So we've got data. What do people open? What do they respond to?
Right.
Even all the way down to what reading level should it be? Like, there's data on everything. And I just used a lot of that.
I love that. And I want to get into all of those tactics with you for sure in this interview, because a lot of that stuff, to your point, the data is out there, but there's also a lot of competing or conflicting voices on how to interpret that data. So what I want to go back to is, so you're on the spectrum. I just want to ask you, we cut all this out, but do you mind if I ask, like, how does that impact, or how do you feel that impacts, how did you say it? Some days you just can't people, or you don't know how to people. Would you expand on that a little bit for me?
No, I really don't even mind sharing it. I used to be a bit more closed off about that kind of stuff, but I really feel like the world has changed a little bit. And also just
Yeah.
I'm old enough now where I'm like, well, I mean, if you don't like it, then, like I've just been
Yeah.
through, I've figured myself out enough.
Sure.
But there are days where I would say that it definitely helps me with what I do in many ways from a technical standpoint. But there are days where I could be a little bit overwhelmed with some of the more human elements of things. And the best way I can describe it in most cases is, and this is, sometimes led to issues before, is more of a, people are like cogs in a wheel that kind of lock together. And for me, emotionally, I tend to not lock up with people. It's not that we aren't both experiencing this thing. It's just that I just sort of naturally don't line up and communicate that way, the same way sometimes. And I've had issues before where people take it as like coldness or disinterest or something like that, and it's not really that. That's really not the case. It's been more stuff like that, just misunderstanding kind of stuff. I have a cousin that's full blown autistic, non-communicative, has to be taken care of all the time. And it's nothing like that. I mean, that's a
Sure.
way, way, way on the other side. So, I mean, compared to that, I'm not even worried about what's going on with me. I just have hard days, like,
Sure.
like,
So it's like, to use the gear example, like the teeth of your gear are just a different shape some days than other
yeah.
people's. So it doesn't.
For me, emotionally, I tend to not lock up with people. It's not that we aren't both experiencing this thing. It's just that I just sort of naturally don't line up and communicate that way, the same way sometimes. And I've had issues before where people take it as like coldness or disinterest or something like that. That's really not the case. It's been more stuff like that, just misunderstanding kind of stuff. I have a cousin that's full blown autistic, non-communicative, has to be taken care of all the time. And it's nothing like that. I mean, that's a
Sure.
way, way, way on the other side. So, I mean, compared to that, I'm not even worried about what's going on with me. I just have hard days, like,
Sure.
like,
So it's like, to use the gear example, like the teeth of your gear are just a different shape some days than other
yeah,
people's. So it doesn't, sometimes you're not on the same frequency with those people,
yeah,
or so,
yeah.
so you have those miscommunications. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and sometimes I can be hyper focused and this is what we're here to do and kind of forget to stop sometimes and just be human,
Sure.
It's like,
Yeah.
what do you say we get some lunch, Like,
Right. A lot of
just,
us can relate to that for sure.
yeah.
For sure.
And it's just, I've been told I can be a little intense sometimes, especially if I'm in the zone. But at the same time, I don't stray away from it because it helps me get a lot of stuff done too. Like
Right.
being in the zone is when I come up with all this stuff. So it's a pros and cons thing, but I don't worry too much about it. It does make me not a great employee. That's one of the reasons why I'm entrepreneurial. It makes me feel like I have a better idea and my own thoughts and I'm just me at this point. So it's better for
Right.
me to start my own thing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's actually really an interesting layer of your story, because you're this technical guy, you have this sort of binary way of thinking. Like, to hear you
Yeah.
use the phrase, there's a right way to do it, even that is very fascinating to hear, because marketing is this fusion. There's two different types of, well, there's more than two, but there's kind of two different camps of people who get into marketing. There's the artists, the data-driven people, and the creative people. And the truth is that marketing is this big, ugly swirl of both, right? True marketing, true relationship building to get people to want to buy Coca-Cola at Christmas, that's not just data. There's some art
Yeah.
to that, right? But getting your email delivered, yeah, there's not a lot of art. Getting people to have a feeling when they read it, that's the art part. And your background has helped you master getting it delivered, but then you've also taken that analytical approach to be like, well, actually, provoking a response, we have a data set of what emails get responses, and so then we can break down that by variable. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, I think that really it ties back into what we're talking about because I'm very sort of scientific with how I relate to people, I guess. So I was like,
Hmm.
what do people like to see in their email? You know, it certainly shouldn't just come from my mind what that is because I'm not a good source. But what I can do is I can take data and information and things that have worked before and I can put them to work. And actually, to add another little interesting layer, I agree that it's a mix of art and sort of the tech stuff. But I think in some ways I am because I very much am like black and white that do that sort of thing. But behind me, there's the guitar. And quite often at night, you can catch me and my wife at a resort in Cancun playing live music for the tourists that come and visit. Like we have a band and we go play music. And that's very much artistic. I like write
Yeah,
songs and stuff. So it's very weird. I'm sort of all over the place, I guess, in some ways. But I find the combination works for this, for
sure.
what I'm doing. I like to call myself, I guess, a bit of a day walker. You know, like I walk in the technical and now the sales sort of sunlight, you know,
Uh-huh.
like maybe, but
Huh. So I'm also a musician. My wife is a
oh, cool,
singer-songwriter.
nice. We
My
can hang
brother
out.
and I
Sounds
used
like
to
we have a
gig
lot in
at,
common.
we have a ton in common. This is kind of cool. All
Yeah,
these listeners are listening to us become friends right now. So this is a special little
yeah,
moment for them. But let's just dive into a little bit of what you're seeing on email because
yeah.
we've talked about email many times in this podcast. I'm kind of on the record saying there's really three reliable ways of doing outbound at scale, which is LinkedIn, using the phone, or using email. And of course, you can
Hmm.
do in person in addition. But email, I don't know if you heard my podcast with Hunter Milsom
Hmm.
or from with Hunter.io, Chris Milsom talking about
Oh,
getting email, outbound email, and he really actually opened my eyes to a lot of that. Email is a lot more alive and well than many people believe, or than I believed. I do maintain a pretty decent dose of skepticism, maybe because I don't like feeling out of control. That's like
yeah,
one of the reasons I do everything I do. And I hate the idea that I put in so much blood, sweat, and tears into an email and then Microsoft decides that this person isn't going to get it.
yeah, yeah,
That really kills me bad. So it's one that I personally invest the least amount of on top of funnel. I use email to nurture people who've opted in. But
yeah.
I mean, just talk to me about outbound email and a little bit of your journey into like the recipe or the origin story that created sort of what you're doing now.
Well, the origin story honestly was necessity. Because honestly, I was intending to put myself out there as an automation engineer and do consulting. And, I initially I put up a website that was big and ridiculous and just tried to solve everything for everybody. I was like, you can get AI agents and your dispatch automated and just this and that. And finally I realized, you know what? I had two problems. One, I needed to just decide to solve a problem. And B, it was a problem that I myself currently faced because, I'd gone away from the route of having, because honestly, I was intending to put myself out there as an automation engineer and do consulting. And, I initially I put up a website that was big and ridiculous and just tried to solve everything for everybody. I was like, you can get AI agents and your dispatch automated and just this and that and that. And finally I realized, you know what? I had two problems. One, I needed to just decide to solve a problem. And B, it was a problem that I myself currently faced because, I'd gone away from the route of having the partnership and now I'm just doing this thing.
Hmm.
So I just got to work, and there's a lot I can tell you about cold email delivery in 2026. For example, you asked me in an email a couple of weeks ago or last week, maybe when we were initially talking about this, about numbers concerning open and click rate. What I've discovered in my journeys is that these days you really need to turn it off. You need to stop tracking opens and clicks because it's a dead giveaway that if you do that at scale, it's a dead giveaway that you're doing spam. And then, as particularly in the last 6 months, the Microsoft and Googles have really come down on it. And AI on the other side reading all these messages has gotten a lot smarter. So now what I'm doing And I could show you, like, my campaigns run, my personal campaigns run from 9 to 5 like a person. They behave like a person. That's the key. You can't just be sending out emails 24 hours a day with laced
Sure.
with all kinds of tracky stuff in it, because it's not what people do. Like, I'm a moniker that I've adopted now when I talk to people about this is the best way to not be spam is to don't be spam. Like, know who you're sending to and be sending a legitimate message to that person. Don't put a bunch of marketing tracking stuff in it. Tracking, that's copyright now. You know, it's
I
been
liked it.
recorded.
Markety trackety.
Yeah, just ease up on the markety trackety stuff, and lead with your offer, and just being real. Now, moving on to being real at scale, you can't be sitting down and writing a big, long, personalized email for hundreds of people. It doesn't really work. That's where AI comes in. But that led to a whole other part of the journey of now
Right.
that's starting to happen, but everybody's emails look the same. Quick question, Brian. I noticed that MSPs have a hard time generating. I mean, they all sound exactly the same. So I literally created a data source of pre-existing cold emails, made a function in our platform, and said, before you write an email, every time you write an email, reference this, and if it's on this thing, don't put it in your email. Like, I don't want you to sound anything like this. So I gave it a whole negative example data
Nice.
source to work from, and now the emails are much more real. They just say real stuff. I also installed right at the beginning during onboarding an interview process where it uses Claude and Perplexity and all these things, and goes and learned a bunch of stuff about your MSP, and then talks to you and gets a bit more context. And now you have emails that don't sound like AI that are in your MSP's voice. So I say all that to say that it's about context. Like, if you give an AI a generic task like write me an email that sells my MSP, well, it's going to sound like everything else. But
Sure.
you can leverage these things at scale. People know when they're being AI'd. Like, you can't. I think that's a new
Sure.
thing now, that and there's this fatigue coming up where you just know you're being AI'd, and you just swipe it away.
Yeah. I
So,
don't take it serious.
no, you don't. And the way, so where I'm tracking it is that literally my campaigns launch they go 9 to 5 Central, and I literally can pull up my Google Analytics and see the moment the campaigns start, because that's when the traffic on my website starts.
Okay, let's start there. So there's three things you just covered that I'm going to ask you about: the no tracking, the negative
Yeah.
keyword, and the AI negative key phrases, and then introducing your own voicing on top of the AI. So I want to talk about those three things. So
Yeah.
first of all, with no tracking, I'm loving what you're saying. I've been talking about this for some time, but this is a whole another level. You're saying not only don't track your open rates, but also don't even track click through or anything. Don't put any
Just
pixels, no hooks in the email, no secret hooks on the back end of the email at all.
No, no, it's about where you want to get them back to. That can be a sales funnel, that can be your website, but basically what's being created now in this moment in 2026 is, I think of it like a ramp. Like, you jump and there's this moment where you're in the air where you're not really sure what's going to happen, and you're kind of forced into having that moment now with cold email, because you've got to make a quality email, and it's got to be something that's compelling enough to where they act on it. But if you do that and you just send basic stuff, it gets there. That's the thing that you're making happen, is that it actually lands in the inbox of a qualified person. Well, now, I say a qualified person. We have a lot of measures we take in terms of, that's a whole other topic we could talk about, where we get our data from, our contacts, that kind of stuff. But assuming you've got your list, the old way used to be throw a bunch of trash against the wall, see what sticks, and by the rule of math, you're going to get something. With the spam filters now the way it is, and with AI and that kind of stuff, you just can't do that anymore. You got to be legit. But that's why I say there's a right way to do it.
Yeah. Is an email campaign only as good as your list? Or how big of it? How obviously we all know that the list is important, of course. But with some
Yes.
people, they're like, "Hey, I don't have it. I don't have of Zoom. I can't afford a Zoom Info, a Lucia, and this other AI scraper one is trash. So they're doing the best they can. They're using Apollo, Sales Nav. They're doing what they can do.
Yeah.
What's your advice to somebody who's in that situation, right? They're like, hey, I have some data. It seems like it's better than nothing, but it's, I'm not going to spend 40 grand a year on this license to get slightly better email addresses. Do I even bother? What do you say to that
Yeah.
person?
That is an interesting question. You need to know who you're going after. But there's multiple ways to do that now. It's an issue I had to address when building our platform, and I had to solve it in a variety of ways. There was no one answer. Like one of the options that our database on the back end has is calling Apollo's API just to see what's over there. Like let's cross-reference Apollo and see if they have anything we don't already have. I've got a follow-up process that when we do get a bad email in a list and we get a bounce, I've got an AI process with Perplexity that picks that up and says, okay, let me do a little bit of research. Who else is there at this company that we could talk to? Because we didn't have a bad company, we had a bad email address. What can we do to find the right email address? But it is a very important part of it, and it's a big part of what we do. And the problem we solve is that, you got to have deliverability to get there, but also, you can have the best gun in the world, and if you're not firing at a target, and it's, it makes things difficult. But with that said, things like Perplexity, Claudebot, Claude Research, like there's more tools than ever to just start scraping stuff, But it is unfortunately a necessary evil, and it's really one of the biggest reasons why we built the tools that we build and we provide it as a managed service, because you do still have to stay on top of it. It's not something that you can set and forget necessarily.
Sure.
You don't
So
necessarily
you're
have to mess with
sourcing
it every day or anything.
Right, yeah. It's not like, hey, every day these email addresses change, but especially because you got to keep feeding the beast. You got to keep getting new contacts over time, right? Depending on the velocity and what your objectives are.
Yeah.
So you are sourcing contact records and then validating those records and then scraping and researching to enrich those records where you have gaps. That's what you do in your platform.
Yes, we're pulling from multiple sources. We're cross-referencing that against other sources, using a couple of verification tools to say, is this still live? In the event that one slips through the crack that turns out not to be legit, I have a follow-up process that says, okay, can we recover this, or do we just need to kick this out? And this isn't a good prospect anymore. I mean, data is a big part of it. It really is. But honestly, I think that scratches on an even much larger topic, because I think that is data being a big part of it. It's not just cold email. It's like everything moving forward. What kind of context can you get the AI so that it can do its job is where we're heading.
Sure.
And data will continuously be a challenge. But a lot of people have a bunch of it sitting there that they could use. We don't only use our engine for client acquisition, just outbound. We also will, if we've integrated with GHL and like MSP sites over there, and you can grab all those contacts and enrich those and campaign against those. And many people have a silo somewhere, that already that they can start, campaigning against.
Sure.
But yeah, that is one of the challenges for sure.
Yeah. And not one that you alone are tasked with making not a challenge. I mean, this is a reason that email is so hard. But let me ask you this is like a skeptic's question. And then
Sure.
I want to go on to this. I want to talk more about AI negative keywording, because that's a really freaking good
Sure.
idea. But what if somebody says, okay, I've got 2,700 contacts in my CRM that is the last 30 years of me walking around getting business cards and blah, blah, blah. And I have all this. This is my whole list. This is everything I got.
Yeah.
And then they go, okay, I'm going to send 16 emails to all 2,700 of these people. Boom, 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 boom. I got 4 people said that they're interested. And now they're worried that they're just going to, blow their whole wad at one store, right? Like,
Yeah.
are they, what am I getting at? The concern I hear from people who are trying to adopt top of funnel, I'll call it top of funnel email, which is what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Trying to get strangers to know who you are and book meetings with you because of you emailed them. how do you personally combat the concern, or what is your opinion on the concern of, well, hey, this, my TAM is only so big. I've only got 5,000 qualified businesses, so I don't want to spray and pray them and burn through the whole list and hurt my reputation. And so people are hesitant at doing outbound at scale because of total addressable market constraints or database constraints.
Sure. I think that really we have to take a step back and identify what at scale means. Like historically, that's meant let's get as many contacts as we can and get as many emails out to them as we can. And I think that fundamentally that's changing. A lot of the campaigns that we have built, which by the way include LinkedIn, bringing on LinkedIn automation to some extent in the next month or so. That's a whole other topic, but it's a multi-touch thing where like, let's get in their atmosphere, send them the first email, go look at their profile and follow them and have something to say. The game is a bit different. It's funny. I had a meeting right before this with a new client that's in New Hampshire. And I've never been to New Hampshire. I've been to a lot of states. New Hampshire's not one of them. But one thing I have learned prospecting it is that it's not very big. It's just not a very big state. So what we're having to work on is we got to be tactful with it. It's not about like, let's just blow the whole thing. It's like, let's divide these up into verticals. Let's have a campaign that's just for the doctors, like just for the lawyers, and keep track of what happens so that we can recycle some of this stuff in 6 months and say, you know what, it didn't work for you the first time, but I thought I'd check back in. And all that's data, that all of that comes down to data management. Keywords, what are they? What vertical are they in? And just managing that in a way to where you don't burn the list up right away, and move with purpose, as opposed to just moving.
Right. I love that. What I'm hearing you say is that, scale, you're right. Scale is a word that is a kind of, it has this magnanimous connotation where scale essentially means that, for every 1% of input, you can get an exponential percent of output. Yeah. Right? That's what scale really means. It's like you can keep doing the same amount of work and keep making more and more money, or non-linear output to input relationship. But so we say everything at scale, and software is all about scale because they all 1000x and they're whatever. Yeah. The software world has changed our definition of scale. But what I'm kind of hearing from you is that your approach isn't so much about how do I email everybody that could be a client as fast as I possibly can. But it's more so about how do we do the things we should be doing with the least amount of manual intervention for us.
Correct. Yeah, I think that brings up a really good thing with AI. I think my philosophy on AI, and I'm using it a lot with our platform, but it always assists. It's with the help of AI, but with the guiding touch being us, using it as a tool. That's, you mentioned at the beginning, we talked about how there's a bit of art in sales. And I guess what I'm suggesting is that with cold email these days, you have to bring some of the art back into it rather than just blasting a hose at people. But with AI, it's way easier for artists to do artistic stuff than ever before, or non-artists rather. It's way easier for people who don't write songs to write songs now, and people who can't write poems to write poems, and so just positioning those pieces to where the part that the person is going to really play the part in moving the needle, position them so that they do that, and not worrying about, is the email going to get there or should I track it or whatever. Just, give you your shot to just reach out your hand and say, hey, I'm Brian, that's really what it's about,
I love it. So on that note, by the way, you said something I think is really profound, that you're not putting a tracking pixel in an email to know if it was even delivered. You're using best practice to get it delivered, and then the point of your email is to get them to go to a certain place or take a certain action.
Correct.
And then you are tracking within your domain. You might be tracking web traffic on the landing page or whatever.
And you also now can put code in your web page pretty easily to track who's visiting it. So like a combination of analytics. I'm pretty sure MSP Sites does a lot of that stuff. Shout out to those guys. They do the put code in your site to see like who's visiting. And it's more about like if you set a trap, for example. Maybe that's not a good example, but we've recently had cats in the neighborhood. But if you set a trap, it's not about monitoring the trap 100% of the time. It's about coming back and saying, did it work? Is there anything in it? And then making adjustments,
Right. So you are de-anonymizing the traffic at the desired locations. And then you're cross-referencing that. Yeah, where possible. And then you're cross-referencing that traffic with your email list to go, look, 25 of the people who are on this email list came to this website within 48 hours of me sending them an email with a link to that website. It's fair to assume 95+% of that traffic was a result of this campaign. So you still have attribution is what I'm getting at. You've just figured out how to do attribution in a smarter way.
Yeah, it just basically play by the rules where it's undetectable by the powers that be. But I literally, right now, I'm looking at my analytics, and there are 3 people on the website right now that I know have been emailed like in the past 10 minutes by my campaign, because before that, early this morning, there was nothing. And you literally can take the timestamp of the emails going out and the analytics on the web page, and you see there's a clear correlation. And I'm literally like right now for the MSPs in the US campaign, I'm sending out, I've got 4 mailboxes attached to it, sending out roughly 150 emails a day or something like that. And I'm getting between 40 and 50 hits on my website every single day right now between those hours.
Sorry, how many emails do you send a day to get that 40 50 touches?
That is between 150 and 200 right now. Like I could show you the campaign analytics and the Google analytics, but I'm literally, what I did is I just put, hey, a basic paragraph, opener, body, that kind of stuff. And I put, thanks, Brian, automatedmsp.com. That's the only call to action I put in it. And I'm getting about a 30% rate right now on people just coming to see what automatedmsp.com is, and once they're there, I don't need cold email to do a job anymore. It's done. They know what about it now,
Wow.
But if the first one doesn't get them, I mean, like right now I've got everybody in a 21-day sequence, that's 4 emails and I think 3 or 4 LinkedIn touches, none of which I've done yet. I haven't even done the LinkedIn stuff yet. I'm behind. But that's just email. I mean, it's, if you just get it there during business hours around the right time in front of the right person, then chances are they'll just open it and say, what's this? And that's all you really need them to do. Get them to where you're trying to get them to go. And, think about what that is. That should be a good website, sales funnel. That's where I got to hand off to guys like you, guys like Nate. Like I didn't go all the way down those roads, so
right.
My job's to get them there,
Well, that's funny you just mentioned both me and Nate. By the way, Nate's getting a lot of money in free advertising right now, but for both of us. But I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of people who are they have done email things, it was unsuccessful, they're skeptical, they're like, hey, email doesn't work in our industry. You're trying to get email to do everything. It is not email's job to make sales. That's not his job.
It's a signal flare. Yeah, I mean, it's,
yes.
Hey, over here,
Hey, look at me. What? Okay, now I'm looking at you. Now you have to get me to know, now you have to tell me why you got my attention, right? Which is what your website or your landing page or your downloadable is. Whatever your call to action, or they used to use the term TCTA, transitional call to action. I don't think they use that anymore. Marketing likes to change acronyms a lot when stuff doesn't work. Yeah, an email's job is like, hey, I exist. This is a problem I solved for somebody who looked like you. And then we go, and you click on the website. Now you've got this beautiful domain that has evocative or even provocative domain. It's provoking an image of, automated MSP. Well, that's interesting. Now, if my stsptech.biz / sales, if that's your domain, it might not provoke the same degree of, you might not get 30%.
Yeah, and you narrow it down even further than that. That in reality, all you have is the subject line and the first like 45 characters or so. That's it. The job of the cold email is essentially the subject line, the first 45-ish characters of that preview text being strong enough to where they just open the email. And then whatever's in that email being quick and catchy enough to where they say, well, who is this? And if they don't the first time, then, when they get another one the next week, they're like, oh, this dude again, and maybe this time I will go check it out. And, if you get them just once to go to your desired target and that desired target's good enough, then your job is done. We're finished.
Let's do this. We are going to go on to the AI negative keywords and the voicing stuff, but hang on. There's 4 problems I want to rapid fire you real quick, because
Sure.
you really seem to have your ducks in a row. You've done a lot of homework on this.
I've been busy.
In my mind, and you tell me if my framework here is off, but in my mind, there's 4 fights in a row. There's 4 things you've got to achieve for email prospecting to be successful. You got to get the email, number 1, delivered. Number 2, opened.
Yeah.
Number 3, read. And number 4, you've got to get the response or the action, the desired call to action. So let's go through those 4. Do you have, what are some tactical tips? How do I get more of my emails delivered?
Well, that is technical stuff. And chances are you probably, if you're an MSP watching this, you likely have somebody on your staff right now that can help with this stuff, because most of it is DNS. Like you need to have an SPF record, a DKIM record, or DKIM, the authentication, the DMARC stuff. You got to have that turned on. And it's pretty standard thoroughfare at this point and not difficult to do. But those are kind of the initial staples that if you don't have that stuff turned on, then you don't have a prayer. So that's like ground zero for deliverability. But also one thing that's really helped me is what I'm doing what a human does? It's amazing how simple and effective that one filter is. Like if I'm trying to get my cold email to send a bunch of crazy stuff at 2:00 in the morning, I mean, that's not what people typically do. And they don't do it to 200 people at a time, and,
Sure.
Those are deliverability kind of things. It's just getting smarter at knowing, hey, is this legit? And
I love that. So I'm going to ask the dummy question is DNS, DKIM, DMARC. I know all these acronyms. But is this something that anybody who's ever set up an Exchange server just automatically knows how to do? Or is it different? Is there somewhere that the technical person who has these chops but maybe doesn't know the correct configurations, do you have somewhere to send them that says, hey, go and read this article and do everything it says? Or again, is this commonplace for all of y'all tech people?
It is pretty common kind of stuff for email stuff, but it's also very commonly not done. I'll go throw in another little free advertising. I met with Michael over at Iceberg, and he has a tool, or what their tool does is it checks a lot of that kind of stuff, because those things are a giveaway that this client likely needs security services. That's why it's of particular interest. But those same security indicators that they use for identifying those clients are the exact same thing that tend to lead to your emails landing in the spam. That same security posture stuff. And we're actually talking about, I've worked with Compliance Scorecard a little bit too, but actually in our platform, we're bringing that data in so that you can use it in prospecting. So find the company you want to prospect for, have it automatically do that security posture check and add that to the notes. And you can target specifically security-based campaign. But funnily enough, what you're looking for in them is this exact same thing you'd look for in yourself that's likely preventing cold email. But with that said, just so I say it out loud, huge disclaimer, make sure everybody knows, never, ever, 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 ever use your existing in production domains for cold email. Don't do it. You get separate emails, you warm them up, you do a separate infrastructure for this stuff, because if you screw it up, then you're not going to be able to communicate with your existing clients for normal stuff. And that's a huge problem, obviously. So, what you do is you buy some domains. You can go to automatedmsp.com/learn, and I put most of what you need to know for it in there, and even a little AI agent you can talk to and just ask. It'll tell you. But you buy separate domains to do all this stuff too, and play around with it, and it just dramatically lowers the risk. You can play around, send some test emails, see how it's working. But that's the main takeaway. Don't ever use anything in production that you need for this, because once your reputation's shot, you can recover, but it takes time.
I love it. Okay, so that's how to get it delivered. I love this. Is very good stuff. Number 2, we need to get an email opened. So you've got preview, you've got subject line, preview text, and probably time of day. I'm guessing are maybe the 3 variables. Maybe there's something else. But what do we do to get more people to open our emails?
Those are big ones. And also I've found that getting to the point, like in the opening, kind of getting to the point, so people know what the deal is. People don't want their time wasted anymore, and on top of that, we're moving more and more into where they likely won't even be reading the email themselves anyway, because everybody's getting inbox assistance and all this stuff. So I'm planning for the future for that, but basically get to the point. Don't lead with an ask. Offer something. Hey, security is a huge deal with XYZ right now. Here's the thing. You want to talk more about it? Give something and be of value, or at least seem to. And also, this is our secret sauce, but I did it. I can't say it's secret sauce necessarily, but what I did at our system is concerning variables. Like there's variables like company name, what their first name is, their last name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when I prepare all of our leads, I have an AI filter that all of those variables go through, and literally its only purpose is, does a human talk like this? Like, does a human say automated MSP, LLC, or would it say like AMSP or something like that? Would it say, Brian something dash something else or some weird thing, or would it say, hey Tim, or like,
if there's an emoji or a dash, or a lot of times people are trying to AI spoof themselves or proof themselves, so they'll put an emoji in their LinkedIn first name or something. So you're looking for those anomalies and then standardizing them.
Yeah, basically I'm trying my best to say, is this what people do? Really, it's amazing how much it comes back to that basic question. Like, you read an email and say, as a human being that would like to talk to another human being, is this what I would say to them? Like, would I do this great big Wizard of Oz, like, don't look behind the curtain spectacular thing? Or would I just get to the point and say, hey, man, we've been here 20 years and we're really good at this, and we're right down the street, and whatever else differentiates you, whatever your thing is, we're really good at this thing. You got to lead with that stuff, because we're moving into a world where there's so much just fakery and AI nonsense that, people don't want to be faked out, and they're getting better at knowing that they are, or at the very least, if you are, then make it useful. I don't mind AI, but don't make it slop, don't make it like generic nonsense, like,
right.
It real.
Trends and subject lines are very cyclical. And we talked about this in my episode with Scotty the other day about webinars and stuff, but I guess you don't track opens. So you don't have any specific, you don't have any like, this is more likely to get it open than this. You're just sort of or do you? And in the subject or the preview, other than just, what do you think? What do you think?
Well, I do. We have to kind of track it on the back end when they get there and sort of reverse engineer. I do use variants. Like, I do have it to where one of the ways that I avoid spam detection is every email has 5 sections. There's the subject line, the opener, the body, the CTA, and the sign off. What I do is, in our system, is the campaign, the AI writes each of those sections each 4 times with 4 variants, but writes them in a way to where they're all individually interchangeable with each other. And then I shuffle that as the emails go out the door. So the end result is that one email actually has to be sent 1,024 times before it technically repeats and is the exact same thing as we sent to somebody else. Very useful for spam filter detection, but also reinforces that the idea is what matters, you know, that this is a coherent statement that is how a person would talk that provides something of value to another person. Like,
Yeah.
you know, that's what this is. And so after that, the details being a little bit interchangeable stops being quite as important.
Sure.
It just, see what I mean?
I do. I think I really love your approach. This is why you're here. This is an amazing approach. And if you were to then, I mean, if we were to regress to our little nerdy state, though, we could potentially cross-reference emails by variable, and then cross-reference, web traffic against those lists to say, hey, this subject line has a 30% higher chance than this subject line for somebody to come to our website. Or,
Yes.
we know, you know what I mean? So are you set up to, or do you encourage people, whether on your platform or elsewhere, to actually examine the back end of those split tests and make those sort of deductions?
Yeah, I do. Where applicable, another route that could happen is they could just reply to the email, and that is 100% tracked, like all the way through. So at least a percentage of it is just going to be like them saying, "Oh yeah, cool, send me your Calendly link," or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. And in that instance, you're going to have full tracking. The only reason we won't have it, or that there's any sort of, while there'd be any concern about it, is if they're doing that ramp jump I talked about, where we lose them for a minute between the email and them getting to the thing, but we can put stuff in the thing to try to figure out where they came from, and what happened. That's not going to be 100%, but honestly, I think that's the idea. That's the reason why things have gotten difficult in the way they are, is not to stop cold email, but to make it legit, and to put an end to scaled nonsense, So like I said, right at the beginning, I said my moniker is that the best way to not be spam is to don't be spam. It works every time.
And so I think you've sort of already answered then, because the last two questions were how do you get people to read the email, and how do you get people to take your desired action? And it sounds like, humanity, clarity, brevity.
Yeah.
The basic instincts here are the right ones, is kind of what I'm hearing. Is there anything else to add to that, to things that you've observed, maybe things that surprised you that are more likely to get a reply or a click?
Just little there's fun little things I learned where I was like, really? Like, for example, I learned that it's typically best practice to keep your emails between the 5th and 7th reading grade level. Statistically speaking, that when you go above that, it's not so much that people can't read above a 7th grade level or anything like that, but that it's easy to read something that quick and low hanging, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, I need that or whatever. A lot of little stuff like that.
Right.
You can go to, like I mentioned earlier, at automatedmsp.com/learn. There's like the entire research project I did, or a big portion of it, all of it's there in 87, I think it is, different articles. And there's a little AI agent that can even answer questions like that. Like, what should my subject line be? Like, with best practice. And that's totally free. You don't even have to give your email to use that. You just go.
That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Well, then I got two more things I want to talk about. I know we're coming up on an hour already, which is kind of bonkers. But I want to talk to you about this negative keyword thing, because you said it right at the top. The prefix, the starter of "I noticed." As a listener or as a recipient, I'm over it. I actually check out right away. In 2023, that was a really exciting new thing to introduce the buying trigger. That was a new thing, okay?
Yeah.
And because there was no way to do it at scale, And so there was early adopters like lavender.ai and things like that that could help you do company and or market research. And then there's the D&B Hoovers and the Zoom Infos who are like looking for companies in the news, so if you're, but that's more relevant if you're software selling Fortune 500 or whatever. And hey, I noticed you guys just closed another funding round. Can I have some of your money that you just got? Buy my crap.
Yeah.
But the quick question also, I think it's, to me as a recipient, is very played out. I don't want to read the quick question anymore. Often it's not even a quick question. It'll be like, quick question. We do this thing. Want it? Like, well, that wasn't really a question. That was a pitch. And you phrased it like a question, but it wasn't really a question.
Yeah.
So you have this, I'm interested in this because you've essentially built a bank of negative keywords or negative key phrases.
Yeah.
And you are having them just avoid those phrases. And then are you changing that over time? Just tell me more about that.
I took it even a step further because I'm the automation guy. Like, I don't want to have to circle back to stuff unless I have to. So what I did is, yes, I put in our database negative keywords, phrases, based off as much data as I could find about existing cold email as I could, particularly what it says, works right now. And what it is that people have just not applied any nuance to it. The reason why all of the emails, the AI emails, start with "I notice" is because it's best practice to open with an observational based hook. So AI, as like AI does, took that very literally, like it always does, and it basically always decides, well, I should start with "I noticed" then, things like that. And so I created just as big of a database as I could to say, look, before you write anything or whatever you write, score it against this and say, run a similarity search. Do you sound anything like this? And don't. And then on top of that, I created another little agent that periodically goes and updates that data for me. So like, the negative data is also being updated by going out to the internet, looking for statistics of what other people are using in cold email and where it's repetitive, and trying to populate itself like overplayed nonsense words that we're just going to stay away from. Like, that's the idea. That's what I'm working on. And it's working pretty good. Like it instantly made my emails way more relatable. Like, instead of saying "I noticed this kind of stuff," it opens with like, most MSPs rely on referrals, and that works until it doesn't. And I'm like, man, that's a great opening hook. That's true for almost every MSP,
Right. I love it. Okay. So then you mentioned this other thing. This last thing I want to ask you about, what I wrote it down as you were talking about it, about applying your own voice to the AI. Tell me a little bit more about, because you mentioned that as a sort of a final layer, like an agent or something that you built that helps you kind of then add additional nuance or brand specificity to the AI writing. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah.
So
It's
talk to me about
part of
that.
the onboarding process. Yeah. So basically, it's another agent, and it starts by gathering as much information about you and your MSP that it can, which even that alone is a little scary. Sometimes I'm surprised with what it comes back with, and I'm like, really? You found all that? But basically, it goes and finds what it can, and it knows what it's doing. It knows that it's part of this email system, that later we're going to be writing campaigns and finding prospects, and it knows, what it's gathering information that will help for the future for that. But it's all just conversational, like you would talk. So it's like, hey, I found out this. I was really surprised. I did one for an MSP the other day, and it was like, came back and it was like, the fact that you offer like a 90-day money guarantee and this SLA for on-site stuff is a big differentiator. And we're not told it any of that. Like, it just went out and just figured all that out. So, it was able to literally, in that case, completely write the campaign because it went out and found out who they are, where they serve geographically, what kind of verticals they work in, and offers that they've been giving out recently, and just came back and said, "Is all this right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll go sit down." Yeah, that's right.
Is it doing this for automated MSP, or is this doing this it's running that for the prospects that you're about to send emails to? Like, it's doing deep research for you.
It's doing the deep research for you on the MSP initially. And then
Uh-huh.
what we're doing with prospects is we're doing layered research. So initially, as we start to contact people, we have a certain amount of research done. But as that starts to play out and we start to identify and continue with AI to score them and that kind of stuff, we might call out some specifically, like, let's go do deeper research on these guys. Like, that's a
Sure.
really particularly qualified lead. So let's put
Hmm.
the extra effort into
That makes
researching
sense.
this one.
And so when people are showing that they're in a buying position, they're responding, you're going to spend a few more credits to be like, well, hey, okay, let's really prepare ourselves for this. And then obviously you said the agent knows its function so that it can serve you, it can disposition that information in a way that's easier for you to consume and digest for the express purposes. But is it basically writing a little back end dossier that a salesperson could use on a sales call?
Yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, there is a function in the platform called Meeting Prepper, and it's specifically for that. You tell it who you're meeting with, and it takes all of that same context, does research on them, and completely preps the meeting for you. It says, this is some pain points to talk about. Here's some stuff that's been in the news. They've got 2 or 3 job postings open. Like basically anything it can find that's relevant, and it takes it about a minute or so to run, and it'll completely take your context and their context, join them together for the purposes of this meeting, and give you a rundown on what you should talk about and what you should say to sell them services.
Pretty slick, Brian. You
I've
thought
been
this.
busy.
Yeah, you have been. You've been building. You're not kidding.
I've been
You got a
very
lot of
busy.
agents, and something tells me we're only scratching the surface of what you've done. But what I like about this
And we will
conversation
do.
is, and right there you go. But here's what I like about this is that you are open with your journey and what you've learned as you've gone. You're the kind of guy where the more you develop as a person and a professional, it doesn't just benefit you, it benefits your whole community because you're just that kind of guy. That's why you're here, man. And that's just, I just want you to know I appreciate what you're doing. There's a reason this is still the number one problem for MSPs because it's not easy.
It's not easy, and the people responsible for it traditionally live in 2 separate camps. I mean, it's not like you're going hanging out with network engineers and stuff. You're talking to the other sales guys and
Yeah.
the prospects, is that kind of stuff. And it requires 2 different sides of the aisle to really effectively solve it.
Yeah.
And that's why I immediately jumped into being open to talking to people like you and talking to Nate, whose the check needs to be in the mail as many times as we've mentioned him during this call. The other vendors in the space, because this is the problem we're trying to solve. But like the problem that you solve of like, well, what do you do after that? Like the sales
Right.
process kind of stuff. I would be lost almost immediately trying to help somebody with that stuff because that's not my thing, you know.
Right.
But this is something I feel like I can help solve, like for the community, and
Yeah.
hopefully maybe even beyond. Maybe we just make an agent that's so good that just everybody starts using it. Who knows? Well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, or now you know how to make an agent, an industry, a verticalized thing. Now you just make another agent that goes and writes
Yeah.
SOPs for how you wrote that agent. And now all of a sudden you could make automated accounting, automated
Automated
photography.
Yeah,
That's what you should do. I'm sure that's on your radar, but that's what I would do
I'm
if I were
thinking
you.
about it. I actually have a general purpose version I'm thinking about. I already have domains for companypulse.ai, and I'm thinking about
Nice.
doing like a sort of general purpose SMB version, but not now. The mission statement initially has been that I want to solve this problem for the MSP community, and I'm not going to be
Yeah.
moving on a lot until I feel like I've adequately done that, and
Yeah.
that it's really working and all that good stuff.
Well, this is why I wanted to have you on, and I wanted to champion your voice and your mission because, look, let me be clear to the listener. Like, I don't actually care if you buy. I'm not really motivated to get you to buy Brian Kelly's product. I'm motivated because Brian Kelly is invested himself meaningfully into solving a problem that is an important one to solve. And frankly, the entire world is a better place when IT and cybersecurity professionals can get buy-in from this SMB community, and the SMB community can become upskilled and more mature and more resilient against the terrorists who are trying to steal from us. Like, that the entire world is better off when all of these missions are accomplished. And that's why I wanted to have you here. I've kept you way longer than I said I would. I super appreciate your time. If you mentioned you've got a great resource to go and learn, and I'll put that link in the show notes. But if anybody wants to get a hold of you or just hear more about what you do, what's the best way for them to do that?
You know what? Right now, we're still relatively young, and we're still in a phase where if you go that book a demo button on the website, then you're going to talk to me.
Perfect.
So go hit that button and book from there. Or there's just this get started as well, but where you could just jump right in, and you'd hear from me for sure then if you did that. But yeah, it's not hard right now.
Right. Okay. Amazing. So we'll put your contact information, Brian, in the bottom. Thanks again for everything you do. Thanks for all this great information. And yeah, we'll see you at the next thing.